Your net worth is higher than it's ever been. You've done the hard work. You've saved consistently, invested wisely, maybe built a business or advanced in your career. The numbers in your accounts have grown. The financial anxiety that used to keep you up at night has faded. You're not rich exactly, but you're comfortable. More comfortable than you ever expected to be. And yet something strange is happening. You're making financial decisions now that the earlier version of you, the one who built this wealth in the first place, would never have made. You're spending in ways you wouldn't have considered when money was tight. You're taking risks you would have called reckless 5 years ago. You're doing things with money that feel justified because you can afford them without questioning whether you should. The wealth you worked so hard to build is slowly being undermined by the very comfort it created. Here's what almost nobody tells you about growing wealth. The mistakes you make at $50,000 net worth are completely different from the mistakes you make at $200,000 or $500,000 or $1 million. The threats to your finances evolve as your finances grow, and the habits that built your wealth often become the first casualties of having wealth. This video is about the money mistakes people make specifically as their net worth increases. Not beginner mistakes, you're past those. These are the traps that catch people who've already made real financial progress. The errors that feel like rewards for success, but are actually erosion in disguise. If you've built something meaningful and want to keep it, you need to understand how growing wealth changes the game. The dangers are different at this level, and they're far more subtle. The first mistake is the most common and the most destructive, letting lifestyle inflation consume every gain. You know what lifestyle inflation is. You've probably warned others about it, but knowing about it and being immune to it are completely different things. When your net worth was low, you were vigilant. Every raise, every bonus, every windfall, you directed most of it towards savings and investments. That's how you built what you have. The gap between income and spending was sacred. But something shifts as wealth accumulates. The vigilance relaxes. You start telling yourself you've earned the right to enjoy your money. And you have. That's not wrong. The problem is how easily enjoying your money becomes spending everything extra that comes in. The promotion happens, and suddenly you need a nicer car to match your new position. The bonus arrives, and it seems reasonable to finally upgrade the house. The investment returns are strong, and surely you can afford the vacation you've been postponing for years. Each individual decision feels justified, but collectively, they eliminate the wealth-building engine that got you here. Your income rises, but your savings rate stays flat or declines. You're earning more than ever while building wealth slower than when you earned less. The math is brutal. Someone earning $150,000 who maintains a 30% savings rate builds wealth on $45,000 annually. Someone earning $250,000 who lets lifestyle creep reduce their savings rate to 15% builds wealth on $37,500 annually. The higher earner accumulates less despite earning 60% more. The fix isn't refusing to upgrade your life as your income grows. It's being intentional about the ratio. When your income increases, decide in advance what percentage goes to lifestyle and what percentage goes to wealth building. Maybe it's 50-50. Maybe it's 70-30 toward investing. The specific split matters less than having one at all. The wealth you've built came from the gap between earning and spending. Protect that gap like your financial life depends on it, because it does. The second mistake sneaks up disguised as sophistication, adding complexity that doesn't add value. When your net worth was smaller, your financial life was simple. A checking account, a savings account, maybe a retirement fund with a target date fund inside it. Simple worked. Simple built wealth. As your wealth grows, you're exposed to increasingly complex financial products, alternative investments, private equity opportunities, hedge fund access, sophisticated tax strategies, complicated insurance products. People start presenting opportunities that require diagrams to explain. The temptation is to assume that more wealth requires more complexity, that sophisticated investors use sophisticated strategies, that simple approaches are for beginners while complex approaches are for serious wealth builders. This assumption costs people enormously. Research consistently shows that complexity rarely improves outcomes for individual investors. The average hedge fund has underperformed simple index funds over most time periods. Alternative investments often carry fees that devour their supposed advantages. Complicated tax strategies frequently cost more in professional fees than they save in taxes. The financial industry profits from complexity. Complexity justifies higher fees. Complexity creates dependency on advisors. Complexity makes it harder for you to evaluate whether you're getting value. Meanwhile, simple approaches keep working. Low-cost index funds keep delivering market returns. Straightforward tax-advantaged accounts keep providing benefits. Basic estate planning documents keep protecting families. Some complexity becomes appropriate as wealth grows. Certain tax strategies genuinely make sense above certain thresholds. Asset protection becomes more important as you have more assets to protect. But the appropriate increase in complexity is usually far less than what's being sold to you. Before adding any complexity to your financial life, ask, what specific problem does this solve that simpler approaches don't? If you can't articulate a clear answer, the complexity probably serves the person selling it more than it serves you. The third mistake transforms confidence into overconfidence. Believing your success means you're skilled at everything financial. You built significant wealth. That's a real accomplishment that required real skills. Discipline, patience, good decision-making, probably some career success or business acumen. The danger is extrapolating from that success into areas where your skills don't actually apply. You were disciplined about saving, so you assume you'll be disciplined about trading individual stocks. You made good career decisions, so you assume you'll make good decisions about starting a business. You picked investments that performed well during a bull market, so you assume you have genuine investment skill rather than good timing. This overconfidence leads to concentrated bets that can devastate wealth. Someone who built $500,000 through steady saving decides they can pick the next big stock and puts $100,000 into a single position. Someone who succeeded in their industry assumes they'll succeed in an industry they know nothing about and invests their savings in a friend's startup. The behaviors that built wealth, diversification, patience, avoiding speculation, get abandoned precisely because wealth has arrived. The very success that should reinforce good habits instead creates the confidence to abandon them. There's a particular version of this that's dangerous in 2026: cryptocurrency overconfidence. People who bought Bitcoin or Ethereum years ago and saw massive gains sometimes assume they have skill at identifying valuable digital assets. They then pour money into newer, riskier tokens, treating speculative gambling as informed investing because their first bets happen to work. Past success in specific circumstances doesn't guarantee future success in different circumstances. The humility that served you when you had less should intensify as you have more. The stakes are higher now. The mistakes are more expensive. Keep doing what built your wealth. Resist the temptation to believe you've evolved beyond the need for diversification, patience, and avoiding speculation. The fourth mistake involves taking on debt that feels different because it's sophisticated, leveraging investments because you can afford the risk. When your net worth was lower, you avoided debt religiously. Credit card balances got paid immediately. You saved for purchases rather than financing them. Debt was the enemy. As wealth grows, a different kind of debt becomes attractive. Leverage for investments. Margin loans against your portfolio. Securities-backed lines of credit. Borrowing against appreciated assets to buy more assets. The pitch sounds reasonable. Why sell investments and pay capital gains taxes when you can borrow against them at low interest rates? Why use your own cash for a real estate purchase when you can use leverage and deploy your capital elsewhere? These strategies can work. They can also amplify losses in ways that devastate portfolios. In rising markets, leverage makes you look smart. Your leveraged investments outperform unleveraged ones. You wonder why you didn't embrace leverage sooner. In falling markets, leverage can destroy you. A 30% market decline becomes a 50 or 60% decline in your equity when you're leveraged. Margin calls force you to sell at the worst possible time. The same leverage that amplified gains amplifies losses. except losses have a floor, 0, while gains are theoretically unlimited. The wealthy people who stay wealthy through market cycles almost always use less leverage than they could. They understand that avoiding catastrophic losses matters more than maximizing gains. They've seen leverage destroy people who were smarter and more successful than them. If you're going to use leverage at all, use it sparingly and only with assets you could survive losing entirely. Never leverage to the point where a major market decline would force liquidation. The goal is still being wealthy after the next bear market, not being maximally wealthy, assuming markets always rise. The fifth mistake is subtle but pervasive, becoming penny wise and pound foolish in reverse. When money was tight, you watched every dollar. You compared prices, used coupons, optimized small expenses. That attention served you well. As wealth grows, a strange inversion sometimes happens. You become too focused on small optimizations while ignoring large ones. You spend hours researching the best credit card rewards while your investment fees quietly drain thousands annually. You haggle over minor purchases while paying for services you've never audited. This reverse penny wisdom happens because small expenses feel controllable. They're visible, tangible, easy to optimize. Large expenses often feel fixed or too complicated to address. But the math clearly favors attention to large expenses. Spending 3 hours to save $50 on a purchase represents a return of about $17 per hour. Spending 3 hours reviewing your investment allocations, tax efficiency, and fees could save you thousands annually, a return potentially exceeding $1,000 per hour. As your wealth grows, the highest leverage uses of your financial attention shift. Subscription costs and daily expenses matter less. Asset allocation, tax planning, insurance adequacy, and estate planning matter more. An extra $100 saved on groceries is rounding error compared to properly managing the tax implications of a concentrated stock position. Periodically audit where your financial attention goes. Are you spending time on optimization that matches the scale of your current wealth? Or are you still focusing on the small expenses that mattered when your wealth was smaller? The frugal habits that built your wealth are valuable. But frugality at scale means focusing on the expenses and decisions that actually move the needle. The sixth mistake destroys wealth while appearing to be kindness. Financial enabling of family and friends. When you had less, nobody asked you for money. Now that you have more, requests appear. Family members with urgent needs. Friends with promising business ideas. Relatives who just need a temporary loan. Your instinct is to help. You can afford it now. You remember what it was like to struggle. You want to share your good fortune with people you care about. But financial help to others, without clear boundaries, often harms both parties. The person receiving help frequently becomes dependent on future help rather than building their own financial capabilities. Studies show that financial assistance without accountability often enables the same behaviors that created the financial problems in the first place. The person giving help often creates expectations that become impossible to sustain or withdraw from. One loan becomes multiple loans. One gift establishes a pattern of gifts. Saying yes early makes it harder to say no later. Relationships suffer. Money changes dynamics between family and friends. The borrower feels obligated and perhaps resentful. The lender feels taken advantage of when gratitude fades. Eventually, you're avoiding family gatherings because you know someone will approach you about money. There are ways to help that work better. Giving money as a true gift, not a loan, with clear communication that this is a one-time thing and shouldn't be expected again. Helping with specific needs rather than providing cash that might be misused. Connecting people with resources and opportunities rather than funding them directly. If you do lend money to family or friends, consider it a gift mentally. Assume you'll never see it again. If you can't afford to lose it, don't lend it. The wealth you built is yours. You're not obligated to share it with everyone who asks. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's what allows you to help sustainably when you choose to, rather than being depleted by endless requests. The seventh mistake involves forgetting what your wealth is actually for. accumulating without purpose until accumulation becomes the only point. The habits that built wealth, saving, investing, living below your means, can become ends in themselves rather than means to ends. You start seeing your net worth as a scoreboard. Each increase feels like winning. Each decrease feels like losing. The number becomes the goal rather than what the number enables. People in this trap continue saving aggressively even when they have more than enough. They deny themselves experiences and enjoyments their wealth could easily fund. They accumulate security they've already achieved many times over, while missing the life that security was supposed to enable. The fear driving this behavior is understandable. You worked hard for what you have. You remember what it was like to have less. You never want to be in that position again. But there's a point, and you should know where yours is, at which additional accumulation provides no additional security. The difference between 2 million and 3 million in invested assets doesn't change your practical security. Both amounts provide more than enough to sustain reasonable spending indefinitely. The third million is optionality you'll almost certainly never need. At some point, the purpose of wealth shifts from building security to funding life, experiences with people you love, time freedom, support for causes you believe in, enjoyment of the years you have. If you're still accumulating while denying yourself things your wealth could easily fund, ask why. Is it genuine insecurity based on realistic risk? Or is it habit, inertia, an identity built on frugality that no longer serves you? Your future self will not thank you for dying with the highest possible net worth. Your future self will thank you for using your wealth to live fully while you could. The eighth mistake involves comparison that can never be won, measuring yourself against people with more. When your net worth was $20,000, you didn't compare yourself to millionaires. The gap was too large to feel relevant. Now that you're at $200,000 or $500,000 or more, you're closer to people with significantly more wealth. They're in your social circles, your neighborhood, your professional environment. The comparison becomes unavoidable. This comparison is toxic in a way that earlier comparisons weren't. You see someone with a nicer house and feel your house is inadequate, despite your house being objectively great. You see someone taking expensive vacations and feel your vacations are modest, despite your vacations being experiences you genuinely enjoy. You see someone's investment success and feel your steady approach is boring, despite your approach building real wealth reliably. The hedonic treadmill applies to wealth as much as anything else. Each new level of wealth creates exposure to a new tier of people with even more. There's always someone richer. The comparison never ends unless you consciously end it. The person with $10 million often feels behind because they know people with 50 million. The person with 50 million feels behind because they know people with 500 million. This continues all the way up. Billionaires compare themselves to other billionaires. If you let comparison drive your financial behavior, you'll never feel successful regardless of your actual success. The goalpost moves every time you approach it. The alternative is defining enough for yourself based on what you actually want rather than what others have. What income do you need to fund the life you genuinely want? What net worth provides genuine security? What experiences matter to you rather than what experiences impress others? When you define enough clearly, reaching it becomes possible. When you let comparison define it, reaching it becomes impossible by design. The ninth mistake involves risk that feels acceptable because you can afford losses. Speculating because you have money to lose. When every dollar mattered, you were appropriately cautious. Risky investments felt risky. Speculative bets felt speculative. You couldn't afford to lose, so you didn't take risks you couldn't survive. As wealth grows, a dangerous mental shift happens. You start thinking in terms of what you can afford to lose rather than what you should risk. You have a cushion now. A bad bet won't destroy you, so why not take some chances? This thinking leads to speculation that would have horrified the earlier, more careful version of you. You put $50,000 into a friend's startup because you can afford to lose it. You take a concentrated position in a volatile stock because the upside is huge and you could survive the downside. You gamble on crypto because it's only money you've already made, as if that makes it less valuable than money you haven't made yet. The problem is that these acceptable losses add up. One $50,000 loss is survivable. Multiple speculative bets that go wrong can destroy significant portions of your wealth, and each loss hurts more than the pleasure from equivalent gains. That's prospect theory, and it's why speculative investing usually feels worse than it looks on paper. There's also opportunity cost. The 50,000 you lose speculating is 50,000 that isn't compounding in your portfolio. At 7% annual returns, that 50,000 becomes nearly 200,000 over 20 years. The speculation didn't just cost 50,000, it cost the future those dollars would have created. Having money you can afford to lose doesn't mean you should find ways to lose it. The habits that built your wealth, diversification, patience, avoiding speculation, remain valid regardless of how much wealth you've accumulated. If anything, they become more important as the stakes increase. The 10th mistake is neglecting protection as there's more to protect, underinsuring and underplanning because you've been lucky so far. When your net worth was small, inadequate insurance wasn't catastrophic. There wasn't much to protect. Bad luck could set you back, but there wasn't far to fall. As wealth grows, the consequences of inadequate protection grow with it. You have more to lose now. A lawsuit, a major health event, a liability claim, any of these could devastate what took years to build. Yet many people with growing wealth maintain the same insurance and protection strategies they had when they had less. They've never updated their coverage levels, never reviewed their liability exposure, never considered umbrella insurance, never created or updated estate documents. The calculus changes as wealth accumulates. Lawsuits target people who appear to have assets. Medical events can be financially devastating without adequate coverage. Dying without proper estate planning can cost your heirs significant portions of what you intended to leave them. In 2026, certain protections become particularly relevant at higher wealth levels. Umbrella insurance provides liability coverage beyond standard policies, typically costing a few $100s annually for $1 million or more in coverage. This protects against lawsuits that exceed your home or auto insurance limits. Estate planning becomes increasingly important. Without proper documents, your assets may be distributed according to state default rules rather than your wishes. Your heirs may face unnecessary taxes. Decision-making authority during incapacity may go to people you wouldn't have chosen. Asset protection strategies. Legal structures that shield wealth from potential claims make sense above certain thresholds. Trusts, appropriate titling of assets, business entity structures. These aren't just for the ultra-wealthy. Review your protection strategies annually as your wealth grows. What made sense at $100,000 may be inadequate at $500,000. What you could self-insure before may require coverage now. The cost of protection is almost always far less than the cost of being unprotected when something goes wrong. The patterns behind these mistakes share a common thread: success changing the psychology that created success. The vigilance relaxes because there's a cushion now. The caution fades because losses feel survivable. The simplicity gives way to complexity because sophistication seems appropriate. The discipline softens because you've earned the right to enjoy yourself. Each of these shifts makes intuitive sense. That's what makes them dangerous. They feel like appropriate adaptations to change circumstances rather than threats to continued success. The people who build wealth and keep it, who don't just reach financial security, but maintain it through decades and market cycles, resist these shifts consciously. They stay vigilant despite having cushion. They remain cautious despite being able to survive losses. They embrace simplicity despite having access to complexity. They maintain discipline despite having earned rewards. This isn't about being joyless or miserly. It's about recognizing that the habits that built wealth remain valuable regardless of how much wealth exists. You can enjoy your success without abandoning the behaviors that created it. The goal isn't maximum accumulation at all costs. It's building a financial life that supports a good life sustainably, one that can weather market crashes, economic shifts, and the inevitable surprises that decades bring. Everything in this video is financial literacy applied to the unique challenges of growing wealth. Most financial content focuses on building from zero, overcoming debt, starting to invest. That's important work, But the challenges don't stop once you've made progress. They evolve. The mistakes that threaten your finances at higher net worth levels are different from the mistakes that threaten beginners. Understanding these evolved challenges is itself a form of financial literacy that most people never develop. They learn how to build wealth, then stumble into the traps that undermine it. They do the hard work of accumulating, then make the errors that deplete. I made a complete breakdown of financial literacy that covers the entire arc, not just how to build, but how to protect, not just how to grow, but how to sustain, not just the mechanics of money, but the psychology that makes the mechanics succeed or fail. If this video showed you risks you hadn't fully considered, traps waiting in your financial future, that video will give you the complete framework for navigating wealth at every stage. It's the education that prevents the mistakes rather than just identifying them. Because the truth is, building wealth is only half the challenge. Keeping it, through decades, through market cycles, through the psychological shifts that wealth itself creates, requires a different kind of understanding. The money you've built represents years of discipline and good decisions. It deserves protection from the mistakes that success makes possible. Those mistakes are real. They catch people smarter and more disciplined than you or me. They work slowly, subtly, feeling reasonable until the damage becomes visible. Now you know what to watch for. The question is whether you'll stay vigilant, whether you'll maintain the habits and psychology that built what you have rather than letting success erode them. The people who stay wealthy answer that question correctly, over and over, for decades. The choice is yours.